Now, the Indian cricket team is touring South Africa for a test series. The first resulted in a landslide victory for the hosts, and the second one is scheduled to start tomorrow in the very picturesque Cape Town. Kagiso Rabada took his 14th fifer in Test cricket. Dean Elgar notched up his second highest individual Test score and will be leading the side in his final match before walking away in retirement. And the Proteas, coming in hot, will be looking to get in hard and make it a clean sweep against India. Clearly, South Africa loves its Test cricket, right? Well, I'm not too sure of that. Some days ago, Cricket South Africa, or the CSA, released a 14-player squad that will be travelling to New Zealand for a 2-test series next month. It's a list that's stumped everyone. There are no big recognizable names in that entire squad. It's a list that has as many as 7 uncapped players. Neil Brand is yet to play a test for his country. When he does on February 4th, he will as captain of the side. 3 of the top 6 players who have been in and around South Africa's test squad, like Keegan Peterson, David Bedingham and Zubair Hamza. Now, we'll talk about David Bedingham in particular a little later. There's an interesting story around him. Peterson was named in the Boxing Day test. Hamza later played Test cricket in 2022 in New Zealand, and he's returning after serving a 9-month ban for a doping violation. The only other capped batter is Kaya Zondo. That's the squad, who has played 5 tests and the most recent one against Australia earlier this year. This announcement, of course, has created quite a stir. First, let's understand why this has happened in the first place. The dates of the tests between South Africa and New Zealand are February 4th, when the first test begins, and it ends on the 17th of February with the conclusion of the second test. That is clashing with the South Africa T20 League that's scheduled to take place between January 10th and February 10th, exactly a month. The schedules, of course, cannot change. But when the country is playing a test series, shouldn't their first team or the first squad be there? There is a World Test Championship that's on the line, and it's Test cricket. But no. You see, South Africa, or the CSA, is invested in this league. A league where the main man in charge is Graeme Smith, the legendary South African captain who led the national side through some historic moments across 2 formats, Tests and ODIs. And the CSA has ordered their centrally contracted players to play the SA T20 League. They do not have an option to pull out of this or any other commitments, including national duty. An Indian board like the BCCI can afford putting the national side and their schedule above all else because they can. BCCI is one of the most financially robust cricket boards in the world, but of course not South Africa, who started this league last year in the hopes of making money so that the board can be a little less reliant on a country like India for bilateral series profits and more self-sustaining. A league like this needs the top players to be a part of it. That's what makes any league big and successful. A prime reason why BCCI has strictly ordered all their centrally contracted players to not play or be featured in any other league, because Indian players means big draw. A boost of brand value leading to more audience and more spectators coming in, leading to more sponsors and more revenue. Now, getting back to CSA and SA T20, how much money are we talking about here? Now, according to reports, CSA aims to break even in 4 years and start making a profit in the 5th year of its league. Over 10 years, it has estimated a cost at $56 million and a revenue of $119 million, which will leave the board with a healthy profit of $63 million, which is tons more than the board makes through a bilateral series. So basically, the only way CSA can stay afloat and start showing green officially, a league will be a success when the top players play in it. Hence the diktat for their key players to be part of this. But some former cricket captains, like World Cup winning captain Steve Waugh, is livid. He said, obviously they don't care. It's going to happen if the South African Cricket Board are any indication of the future, keeping their best players at home. If I were New Zealand, I wouldn't even play the series. I don't know why they're even playing. Why would you, when it shows a lack of respect for New Zealand cricket? In fact, he took to Instagram saying that, is this a defining moment in the death of Test cricket? Surely the ICC, along with the cricket boards of India, England and Australia, must step in to protect the purest form of the game. History and tradition must count for something. If we stand by and allow profits to be the defining criteria, the legacy of Sir Don Bradman or W.G. Grace and Sir Garfield Sobers will remain irrelevant. Now, this is not the first time CSA has done this. They got their players to pull out of the ODI series against Australia last year, owing to the launch of the SA T20 League. There is one very interesting story, though, that's coming out of all of this, and that is of David Bedingham. Remember, we started talking about him. Now, CSA had also got their domestic players to enter the player draft. Any franchise interest would mean a big payday, like it has been for Tony DeZorzi, for example, who put in his name and has been picked up by the Durban Supergiants. David Bedingham had put in his name as well, but then he gets a call from the South Africa Test coach.
Shucks just called and said there is a possibility, and as soon as I heard there's a chance that no one from SA20 can play, I thought my chances of playing are probably high. So I didn't even have a second thought. I told him I will take my name straight off the draft so I can hopefully play.
Bedingham, unlike South Africa's first-choice players, doesn't have a CSA central contract. He says he has always loved Test cricket. That was his first choice. That showed in his gritty half-century against India in his debut in the Boxing Day Test. To think that back in 2016, playing cricket itself would have been something near impossible. Bedingham had been involved in a car accident that had damaged his limbs. And now all he can think of is playing Test cricket in front of his parents who will be coming in to watch him. Where the first Test match against New Zealand is scheduled to take place. David Bedingham is just one anomaly, though. One weird spark in a larger narrative that is slowly taking shape and dominating the story of sporting culture, of countries developing their own T20 leagues, blooding in the fast-paced cricket more than the slow, strategic Test cricket. It's happened with football, and the domino effect is already on in cricket. The question is, how invested are the powers that be for keeping certain formats like ODI or Test cricket alive and in the best of its health?